Hi, my name is Ebenezer Safodu. I'm a business strategy consultant and a data specialist. If you've been following my business channel, you would know that I've been teaching Power BI for the past, I think, in January. So this training is geared towards helping people to understand Power BI, the basics at least, and be able to do some calculation. We've done day 1 and day 2. So if you've not watched them, kindly say the day 1 and the day 2 video before you continue with day 3. Day 3 is a continuation of the first and the second. Today we'll be going quite deeper, and I hope you'll be able to catch up after 2 days. I'll be going quite fast. There's a lot to catch up on. So I'll be looking at some. So currently in day 1 we did data transformation mainly, or we actually looked at the general parts of the BI, and in day 2 we did data transformation. In day 3 we'll be continue with the data transformation and also desktop modeling. And in desktop modeling we'll be looking at what we call measures and calculated columns, a very interesting part of BI. And we'll be using the DAX language, which is the data analysis expression. So that is the language that the Power BI is using. In the query editor we use what we call the M language for some calculations. So I'll continue with the data transformation. Mainly we are going to do merging of queries and maybe some conditional columns, and then we'll go straight into the BI to look at other desktop modeling, i.e. the calculated measures, the calculated columns, and some other iterations we can do here. On day 4 we'll be looking at some BI concepts, that's some advanced DAX, and day 5 we'll end it with visualizations, how we can tell the story and have a very nice report. So welcome, and let's go straight to the presentation. Alright, so the last file we're using, was the training day 2 file. We created this. So if you remember, we were able to create the COVID-19 dashboard. We'll continue from there before we look at our financial data. So this time what we are going, last time we just did the confirmed cases dashboard. So now let's go to our old data set, which is the COVID CSSE. You search, you go to the GitHub. Oh, it's been a while, so so the CSSE, COVID-19 CSSE, the GitHub file. We are going to bring this time the deaths. We did the confirmed cases, so let's look for the CSE COVID-19 data. Go to time series and then look for deaths global. So this is a continuation of the first one, and once we select that, if you remember very well, we click on raw when the data is shown. So this is the file, so we click on raw and then you get something like this. So this is the death cases all around the world. So this is the file we've been working with. So what you need to do is, when you open the file, you want to transform the data, because every time we bring in data, instead of going to get data, just go to transform data, this transform data, and it will send you to the Power Query editor, because we are coming to do some transformation. This is the old file that we had, that's COVID-19 global. Remember the date was set based on the last file that we used. What we are going to do is to just click on refresh all, and when I refresh all and I close and apply, let's see what happens. I think it's here to load. Let me click on, you can either refresh all there or click on refresh here, and let's see what happens. So it's refreshing our data set. So normally if you add new rows to your data, you can just come to your BI file and click refresh. Maybe on day 5 I'll show you how to do automatic refreshes, so as when there is new data, automatically you would be able to refresh. Because not all dashboard you can have. So you see that it has changed to 14. So that's the latest data set in the covered data. So now let's go back to transform data and bring in the death cases. So we are going to do what we call merge. The last time I showed you how to append queries. We are going to merge the data set. So we are going to bring upon the death onto the confirmed cases. That is the merge. Merging is more like an extension of your data set to cater for a new column. But with regards to append is the same columns, but you add one onto the other. So maybe January, February, the same columns, then you append January onto February. That's what we did with the append. In the merger, you have different data, but they are related. So you are bringing one data set onto the other. For instance, let's say you have data set on a classroom, and you have one data that has, let's say, carries the names and their index numbers, and you have another data that has the index number and the score, but you want to bring the names onto the index number and the score. So there's index number here and there is index number in the other table. So you merge it so as there will be only index number, name and score. So you've merged the two tables to contain the same data set. That's what you're also going to do with the covered data. So we have confirmed cases and we have death cases. So to bring in the death cases, what I'll do is just to go to new source. It's a web data, and I'll paste my URL there. The URL we're going to copy from there. So it's establishing contact connection. So once it is done, we'll get something like this. And if you remember, you would know the iteration we do on the data set before. So first we'll promote rows as headers. So we'll promote rows as headers. So that's what we have. Let me check to make sure the other one too is like that, province. And then we'll change the date. If you remember, we would, so I'm just repeating what we did on the old one. We had to pivot these 4 columns so as all the dates. But first, before I do that, let me go and check my date and see if there is still a limiter, a delimiter on it, and remove it. Alright, so the column 3 equal to 340. I'm removing it so as my data set is, so let me click done. If you watch the day 2, we did various transformation on this data set. I don't want us to, I'm just showing you how the merge is done. So now let me pivot other columns. So now this is my date column. So date, let me change it from test to date. You get this error. You remember, you go back and you right click, you go to using local, I'm sure those who watch the other video can actually even start correcting without being taught. Then change it to date. I'm changing the date because I got the errors because the date is in Ghana style and my data source is in the United States style. So I look for English United States and click OK. This would be corrected. I'll change the date back to date and then uncheck my old data type. So now I have date and let's call this dates. Alright. So I have my date and dates. I have my province, country, latitude, longitude, dates, dates. Alright. So now that I have the same, look at this column. The other one, the confirmed cases, is province, country, latitude, longitude, and date, and confirmed cases. So what I'm going to do is to bring the dates. So let me refresh all, so as the same dates are on there. Just refreshing. So what I'm going to do is to bring the date onto the confirmed cases. I'm going to merge them, so as I don't have two different tables, because this contains that in a certain way. They all have province, country, latitude, longitude, but what differs from each one of them is the dates. So I'm going to merge, and in merging I need to merge on certain parameters. So I'm going to merge them based on the province, country, and date. So what it will do is that it will go and look for the same province, the same country, and the same date, and merge the dates onto the confirmed case, because that's where they are merging on, that's where they are common, because you want for each day the same country, the same province, for it to return a certain dates onto the confirmed cases. I could have added the latitude and longitude to my merge, but it's of no importance. It will give me the same results anyway. Alright, so let me go and select merge as new. So this is confirmed cases and I'm merging it onto the dates. Pay attention very carefully with this when it comes to merge. I'm merging on three parameters: province, country, and date. That's, you see that will be selected here 1, 2, and 3. The same thing should be selected for the second table: province, country, and date. So I'm merging on these three. It says select tables and matching columns to create a merged table. So 1, 2, 3 are what I'm going to merge on. Then you see that it will be estimating matches based on data previews. So it should match. Maybe if I have 11,000 rows, it should match with the 11,000 rows here also. So it's estimating. I may click, it said the selection matches 97648 of 97648 rows from the first table. So it's a perfect match. It means that my merge is complete. Always check to ensure that you have the same match for the first table and the second table. It's very important. So if you are having errors, then you know that the match is not perfect. It means that in some rows it may not find the same values for them. So always check this match. Later in another video I'll show you what this left outer, right outer means, but mostly leave it as the left outer, the default that is given. So let me click OK. Now I'm merging as new, so let me call this maybe my COVID-19 cases. So now I have a merged table which has province, country, latitude, longitude, data, confirmed cases, And if you check right here, you realize that now there is a new table inside the confirmed table. So now I have a table inside a table, and that's not what I'm going to use to analyze. If you look beside the second table that has been in the first table, you see some arrows, both left and right arrows. Click on that, and we are going to expand one column onto this particular table. So now let me uncheck all, and let me uncheck use original column prefix. All that I need is to expand just the dates onto this table. So it's like this is the confirmed cases, and they've merged the dates table onto it, but I want to expand just the dates onto this table. So let me click OK. So I'm just going to have a new column for just the dates, and then that is what our measure is. So it's actually doing the measure. Mind it was 97,000 rows, so it may take a while. So once we get that, we've now been able to merge the dates onto confirmed cases. It's very practical. Sometimes you may have two data sets. One contains data of others. So for this one, the provinces, the countries, and the dates were similar, but they just had different confirmed cases and dates. So now you see I have my dates merged onto the confirmed case. So on one table I can see both dates and confirmed case, and I can uncheck the enable load that we did with the other one. Okay, and enable load. Okay, and now I can close and apply. So that is with the merge. So now at least I've taught you the merge, which was something I couldn't finish in the last class. So now you know what merge queries are. So I'm merging the confirmed cases and the global cases. So it's loading. So when it comes to, we can be able to now plot the confirmed and the merged cases. Alright. Still loading. It's done. Yes. You get this feedback because, mind you, we used to have a table here called confirmed cases, and we've removed that. Now we have only the merged table, so I have to redo all my files. If I knew that's what I was going to do, I would have not have brought it. So I'm just changing this to date and this to confirmed under the values. Let me check this. I'm just rebuilding my. Okay, so I have confirmed cases. Let me see if I can bring the dates onto it. Let's see what will happen. So I have confirmed cases and deaths on the same sheet. Sure, because the deaths are too small, it's not showing clearly. Alright. So rather, let me just uncheck the deaths and do the deaths table also by its side. So this time I'll remove the confirmed cases and put in deaths and see what happens. Whoa, 272. What's happening? Let me go and check what's its count of deaths. Oh, should rather be a value. So let me go back. So these are some of the things you need to learn. That I told you that whenever it is a value, you see sigma here. So there was no sigma, so it means I didn't format my data well. Let me go back to transform data. Go to COVID-19 cases, and in the deaths, instead of any, I'm changing it to whole number. Let me go back here and see if the original one too has any. So whole number. Alright. So now I have a whole number. Still loading. So if you don't do your transformations well, you always come back here. That's why transformations are very important. So I'm changing it from any type to a whole number. So once that is done, it's still loading. When we are done with the merge, what I'll teach would be what I call the modeling. Data modeling in Power BI is very important. It's not always that you are going to get just one table to analyze from. Ideally, most data sets that you'll be working on would be a combination of tables, and you need to model those tables in a certain way before you actually start your visualization or your reporting. So let's close and apply. So you'd have to model the data in a certain way to be able to get the right model. So you see that saying loading model data to model. So after transformation, you model and then you do your reporting or your calculations and then your reporting. So I'll take you through some data modeling and then show how we can use DAX, which is the data expression language, to actually create some measures or columns which will be used for some analysis. Alright, so there we have it. It has loaded now, and now that is a sigma now, so it will not come as count anymore. Let me click on that. So you see the deaths. Let me now bring maybe deaths on confirmed cases. So the deaths are so small, so it's down here, and the confirmed cases are, let me expand it and you see. Yeah, so the deaths are down here, very few deaths as compared to the confirmed cases. So this is deaths and this is confirmed cases. And let's bring back our date. That instead of earliest date, we'll then make it latest. Alright, so there you have it. Then we can bring back our filter for country or region. Let's close the first one. So I have dates here and I have confirmed cases and deaths here. Let me remove deaths too from this. Alright, so there you have it. You have the confirmed cases and deaths. Okay, now let's go to the modeling. So the first one is report, the second one is the data, and the third one here is what you call the model. So this is where your knowledge in database would be relevant. For the model to work, I'm going to bring what we call a date table. Date tables are very relevant in analysis, and you might understand it on day 5. My advice is always, when you start an analysis, create a date table. So some call it the calendar table, some call it the date table. I think with practice I intentionally created a date table here. Let's delete that. That's not a proper date table, so let's delete this date table from the model. So in modeling, what you are trying to do is, like I said, in real analysis you will not have just one table analyzing it. You analyze one table and several other tables which are interconnected. It will be in a proper, what we call a star schema table. So you have the transactional table which contains most of the transactions, and then you have the facts, or what you call a dimensional table, where you get the details. Let's say if you have index number and scores and dates. So the dates, index number, and the scores or the marks would be our transactional table, because every day there will be a transaction, a transaction, a transaction, a transaction. But there will be a unique table that has the names of the students, which is connected to an index number. And the index number is what we call a primary key, because it is unique. Everyone may have just one index number. So that index number will be connected to a fact or a dimensional table which contains the facts about the people. So the fact table or the dimensional table contains the facts. It normally does not change because the names of students will not change. But with the transactional table, you see that it will be changing over time, because every time there is a new transaction, so it changes very frequently. So normally, not to make your data expanded, like it's like one table has all the various columns. So instead of having maybe name, surname, age, date of birth, about the person, all the columns about the person, you can store that in one original table and have another table that stores the action that is happening. So if it is a school, a class, they will be storing just the scores and the index number attached to it, but the details of the person, which is the details and his name, is in the details table. We'll try that with, so I've deleted the date table. I was going to use the date table to show how we can use a date table and connect it. For instance, most of your transactional tables would have date, just like our financial data has date. You saw that the COVID also has date. So most analysis, especially for organizational analysis, you'll be doing time series analysis, so you need a date table which can help you slice. So for instance, this date, it is just one date. Maybe we want to find out how every month we are faring, how we are faring on weekdays, how we are faring on weekends, how we are faring on month, year, how we are faring on the day of the week. All that is needed. Those are dimensions of the date, and that's why I call it a dimensional table. And it is needed, and you model the data in the Power BI in a certain way before you start your transformation. So maybe let me bring in a date table. There are several ways of creating date table. One of the easiest way, which is what I'm going to show you, is that get a standard date table that you always use. Because of time, I'll not be able to show you the formulas and what it means. So I have a formula for my date table, which I'll put in the link below, so as you can use such formulas. And no, I shouldn't. It's not this file. It's not this. So I'll be looking for the ultimate calendar table for you. So you'll be using this ultimate calendar for a lot of other things. It's by Avising. Avising is one of the BI instructors, and the table has about 36 dimensions. So it means that you can slice and dice with every other thing that you need in a table or in a date table. So we are going to work with that date table. It is loading. I'm just doing this so as because of time. Ideally this date table can be built. Maybe I'll do another video, not with this class. The 5-day class is too short to use just one whole day on just the date table. But the date table is very, very relevant in your data analysis. So this is avsyncs file on a date table, and it has so many dimensions of the date table. So I'll go to transform data. So I go to, I think I've opened too many files. So transform data. The interesting thing about queries, especially those that are written in M language, is that when you transform a data set like in an M language, you'll be able to copy and paste into another file. It's just the other files that are linked to sheets that you not get, or files that are linked to a specific source on somebody's local machine. But web files, for instance, can be opened and sourced by any other person. I'm unable to source all these 5 other queries because they are on a local machine. So let me just right click, copy. I'm copying this calendar. So just for you to understand what I'm talking about. So there's a date or a calendar table which has the date, month number, month long, quarter. You check here, you realize that it has 31 columns. So just on date, so I can slice and dice dates 36 different ways. It has weekend and weekdays, all that, and it starts from 2013 to date. So I'll just right click to copy a query. Just copy. I close this file. I'll add this file into the, like the link to the file into the GitHub link that I'll give. Okay, so let's go to our Power BI. Let's go to transform data. So now I'll come here and paste. So this is my calendar table. So the calendar table now has been sent from the other data table or other query that I showed you to the Power BI day training file that I was using. So you can copy a certain query and paste it. Alright, so let me close this. So I have the calendar table here. Let me just go to advanced editor. So this is the code you'd have written for the calendar table, but it's been written for us by courtesy avsyncs. So let's use it. It has a start date, so you can always change the start date, but I'll leave it as 2014 for now, since our COVID data starts from 2020, and that might be what we might be using it for this analysis. I can change it and make it start from 2020. The end of year per this date table or calendar table, it is going to use the end of the date, and once the end of the date keeps changing, it will keep changing with it. So I went to advanced editor and changed the start date from 2014 to 2020, because I'm going to connect this date table to my COVID data. I don't need the 2014 date for anything. It's just waste of space for me. So you can close and apply. So what we are going to do is more of modeling. Normally you can have as much as like 8 different tables that you have to model. So now I have only these other tables are not connected. So I have my calendar table, which I want to model and connect it to. That's when you come to model, and I'm going to, let me move this down. I'm going to, let me reduce, okay, so this is my COVID. To join the two, so I have, in modeling, what we are trying to do is to join two tables that are connected. So like I said, I brought in this calendar or date table because I want to have different dimensions of the date. So I want day of the year, I want date, I want current year, I want fiscal year. There's a lot on the date. So what I'm going to do is connect this date onto this date. That's my COVID cases table. So connect the date on the calendar onto the COVID-19 cases date. Let me show you why. So for instance, there are two different tables. There is calendar and there is the COVID-19 cases table. If now I want to visualize, let's say we did a trend, so I want the day of the week, which is inside this calendar table. So I have, let me see if I can find day of the week. This day offset, month, day of the year, fiscal month, future date, week. So that's weekday. So weekday by the confirmed cases. You see, because this is a different table and this is another table, we call them disconnected table. Like when you come to the model, you see that this table and this table have no connection. So even though I chose day of the week, which is part of the date table, and then the COVID cases, because they are not connected, I'm just seeing a straight line. So I'm going to connect the two tables so as we can have a relationship with them. I did a video on tables and relationships. I'll add a link below, so as if you want further and better particulars on it, you can view it. So let's go to link the date of this to that. There are two ways. In PowerBi, there are several ways of achieving the same thing. So you can just click these three dots by it, and then you have manage relationship. That's one way. There's even manage relationship once I clicked on this at this tab here. So I right click and I click on manage relationship. So there are no relationships now. So I go to new. Sometimes I can detect the relationships. Then my first one is the calendar, and the second one is the COVID-19. So I have two dates. So I'm linking date here and date there. So date to date, make this relationship active. It's one to many. One to many means that in the date table that's the cardinality, and the cross filter direction, ideally always make a single. In the future I'll teach cardinality and cross filter direction. But one to many, what it means is that it means that the calendar table has unique dates. There's only one date in the table, so if it's first August, it's only one. But in the date for the COVID-19 cases, you realize that maybe on 22nd January it can appear like 20 something times, because every country has its date. So this is not a unique date table, but this is a unique date table, and normally that's how the fact tables are. They have unique columns. So this one, the date is the unique column with several attributes of the date, which you can use to slice, and it's connected to another table which has many of that same date. So that's why the relationship is one to many. So let's click OK, and then so it is connected, calendar date to COVID date, and let's close. When I close and come here, you realize that now there's a relationship. See this arrow, it shows that it moves from here to here. That was where that cross filter direction was doing a single. It moves from here into this. You can delete it by just right clicking and deleting. That's all. Are you sure you want to delete? You say yes. So that's how you delete a relationship. So we are doing modeling. This is still desktop modeling. Another way of building relations, instead of going through that long manage relationships, we can just pick this date and copy and paste it onto this date. As simple as that. So, whichever way is easier for you, you can use that. Alright, let's go back and see what has happened. All of a sudden there is a change. Let me change my axis, y-axis to 0. We're starting from a place that I'm not. It's giving us an interesting. So this is it. Let me even change the, because this is like a comparison, not like a trend anymore. So now this is my data set on the day of the week. So I have Thursday with the highest number, followed by Wednesday, Tuesday, Monday, Sunday, Saturday, Friday. Wow. So Thursdays have the highest cases. So you might want to find out why that Thursdays have the highest cases. Okay, so that is about connecting two tables. So normally we can connect to another table which is related. The financial table is not related to this, neither is the January and the February. But this same calendar table can be connected to the financials data because it contains date. But to do that, we need to check and see if the financials dates have the same date as what is in the calendar date. So the calendar date, remember I started from 2020. So if you want to connect the calendar date to our financials database, which starts from 2014. What is it? Yeah, 2014. We would have to go back to our date table, go to transform, and then go to the advanced editor and change the starting of the date to calendar. I need to change it to 2020, 2013. I think it starts from 2013. So I do done. So now my calendar table, instead of starting from 2020, will start from 2013. So you see, start from 2013 now. And because my financials database starts from 2013, I'll be able to connect the two. So it starts from, yes, it has 2013 in there. So I close and apply. If you remember from day one, we did analysis with the financials data. If you don't have it, don't worry, I will just add it to this, the link, like the data sets link. Alright, so now so this is the financial data that we played with. So at first we could just do sales by date, but now if we connect it to the date to the it's not this date, it's rather from the calendar to the financial date. So date is connected to date. I can actually now also look at my financial data, which was in the page 1. I can bring maybe the stacked column chart or even the clustered column chart, and then go and look for the weekday. In this case, Let me put the weekday as the axis. And where's the sales on the financials? Remember, we're using sales, which is the first year values. So you see the sales per weekday, because I've connected that dimensional table of the calendar to the financial data which we saw here. So that's what we call modeling. You can model, let's say, like I was saying, if let's say from the COVID data we had data based on the countries, let's say the population of the country, the area of the country, the density of the country, we could add that to the data. I think I have some data set on population of countries. So now I can go to this particular data set of world population, which I've and copy it as a query, come to the PowerBi training, go to transform data. Now queries are becoming a lot. Now go and paste. So I have my world population. I'll add the other data set to it so as you can play with, because we'll be working with it in our next session. We'll be doing some what if analysis on our COVID data set, and we still need that. So this is world population, like I was saying. Now there's each country and the population, its area and the population density. So what I can do, so now this is a new data set, but it has country which is already in the COVID-19 cases, country or region. So because just to make it similar for you, I can just change this to country in the COVID-19 cases, so as it's easier for you. But you could have linked the two without the same name, because it will just go through it and find whether it has the same details in there. So we have the world population data, which has every country and its population and the area and its density. So we have the COVID-19 cases. Let me close and apply. So what is happening is that I have data set on each country which is unique. So each country in the country world population database appears just once. So you have another one-to-many relationship of the COVID-19 cases and the countries. Mind you, even in the financial data to this country. So this particular, you see, when I loaded the countries, it's auto-detected the relationship, country and country, in the world population and the COVID, as well as the country and country in the financial. Because this one you could notice it. So it means that the world populations table has countries and other attributes of them. So because of that, it can help us also analyze the countries and other parameters around them with the COVID-19 data. Later you see how useful that can be. Alright. So for instance, maybe we can look at number of cases per 1 million people in a country, and which is something that I have done. And that brings us to what we call the measures. So after modeling, the next thing you need to do is to create measures or calculated columns. So let me first go through the calculated columns. Calculated columns are row by row iterations. So for instance, those who are familiar with Excel are familiar with calculated columns. So you have sale price and the quantity sold. So you can multiply the sale price by the quantity sold to get sales. So one column by the other. That is what we call calculated columns in Power BI. The measures are quite different. Measures, you would not see them like they are what we call calculated on the fly. It is when they are being used that you see them. So for the calculated columns, let me just do one example so as you understand. I'll use the financial data so as it is easy. All right. So what I'll do is that I would just multiply the sale price. So I'm in the data mode. So there's report, there is model, and there's data. So what I'll do is that I'll delete this sales. No, I'll not delete it because we've used it in our dashboard. So I'll right click and click new column. The new column is also here on top here. So I'll do new column. I'm going to create sales 2. So imagine if we had no sales in our database in the financial. All I need to do is to come here, do sales equal to. Once you bring the equal to, it means what is before the equal to is the name of the table or the column, sorry. So sales 2 is equal to, let's say, sale price. Once you type sale price, the column would come and you select. So sale price times, so you just use the normal times sign, just like how you'd have done in Excel, times the quantity. Is there quantity? No. Units sold. That is it. So I'm just doing a multiplication of sale price. Normally the table name will come first because it doesn't know which column you are referring to, so it will first pop up there. So if you are not, let me enlarge it so as you see what I just did. So sales 2 is equal to sale price times the units sold, and you are getting the same as the gross sales here, because the gross sales is, so let me even rename it. So you can rename it by just clicking and changing the right thing, adding gross in front of it. When I click enter, so this does just a row on row computation, and you're able to see it. So that is the calculated column. Sometimes, let's say you might want to calculate even something like weekday. So we have date here. So instead of, let's say, using the calendar table, let me create a new column called weekday. So I want to find the weekday of this particular date. So the column, whenever you click new column, you get column is equal to. So the what is before the equal to is the name of the column. So let me call this weekday. We have started DAX. The language that we are using here is DAX. So when I say weekday, weekday is a function in DAX, which once you click, you choose a particular DAX measure or DAX formula, sorry. So I've chosen weekday as the formula that I'm going to use. It said weekday returns a number from 1 to 7, identifying the day of the week. So it's going to tell me from 1 to 7 what kind of day of the week it may be. So maybe 1 means January, 1 means Monday, 2 means Tuesday, and so forth and so forth. There's a way to get the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but we'll do that maybe in the next class, just not to confuse you. So I'm just using the function in DAX called weekday. So weekday date. So as I type date, I'll look for financials date. It says the syntax is being shown here that after using the formula weekday, the first thing you need to return is a date, and you bring a comma, and it's asking for the return type. It says 1 to 7. So Sunday is equal to 1. So if I type in 1 now, it means that I'm choosing from Sunday equal to 1 through to Saturday equal to 7. I can choose 2, which means Monday equal to 1 through to Sunday. I think there is also 3, means Monday is 0 through to Sunday, but I'm choosing 1. So as 1 refers to Sunday and through to Saturday. So 1 is Sunday, 2 is Saturday. So let me click enter, and then I'll have a new column called weekday, just like I had a new column called gross sales. So now it's weekday 216. So every one, if you saw the nomenclature we're using, the 1 means Sunday. So that's calculated columns. You can create a column that is calculated on a particular column. It's very useful for, let's say, if you had sales and you had only sale price and what do you call it, units sold. So one column divided by 1, or one column times another, that way. So for instance, let's say we want to create profit margin. Let me create a new column. There are 2 ways to create profit margin. One is if I decide to use what the function we call divide, or I'll just do just a slash like what you would have done in Excel. So let me call it profit margin. So you need to know the formula. So profit margin is profit over the sales. So I told you that everything you do, every column has a table that comes before it. So the financials you see there is just the name of the table. So over the sales, and then we have our profit margin. So that's the profit margin for each. So for every row, it would calculate the sales over the profit over the sales together as profit. And you can also have a formatting for it, because this one is a percentage. So once you select the column, you realize that column tools will be showing, and in the column tools there's a format. So it's general now. I can just click on it and choose percentage. I think in the first video I showed you how to format the columns. Well, I think I chose dollar. Okay, I didn't. So let me show you how to format. For instance, this profit, I select a column. If you want to change it from general to currency, I can change it to a currency, and then the default currency may be dollar, but let's say you are from Ghana and it's Ghana cedis. You come and you check this particular dollar sign, you bring it down, and then you find GHC account. There's GHC. I don't know why they use the local tribes. Now let me choose account so as it's Ghana cedis. So you have GHC Ghana cedis. Let me change the sales to the same. So these are all. Currently we are doing modeling inside the Power BI. We learn transformation. So in Power BI you start with data transformation, you model. Modeling includes the model that we want to build here. It includes some part of writing DAX. DAX is data analysis expression language. It's used to create some kind of calculations which are used. So if you realize, because I changed the currency to Ghana cedis, now I have 118.73 million Ghana cedis. Alright, so that is about the calculated columns. There are various calculated columns that we can do. In my next tutorial, I'll spend the first half teaching some calculated columns and measures. The second thing is what we call measures, and is what I just talked about. It is quite different from what I talked about was calculated columns. Measures are quite different from calculated columns, because they are, when you do a measure, unlike the calculated column that we saw everything there, you will not see it. Measures are only used, you will see its calculation when it is used. So it's like it is a stored function which is used to calculate something. So I can calculate total sales and write a measure for total sales. It will be stored, but when I write the total sales, you will not see anything. But whenever I put it in a visualization, you will see the end result. So we say measures are calculated on the fly when it is used. Calculated columns are calculated, they are permanently calculated. So every time you load the sheet, you see the calculated column. They are pre-calculated. So, and the other is calculated on the fly. So that is, so it uses a lot of size, like memory space, whilst the measures use processor space rather. So it's dependent on, if you don't have too much space, because the more calculated columns you have, the more space, memory space you'll be taking from the BI. But with the measure, is the processor speed that may be affected, because it will be calculating every time it is used. But it is good because it is only calculated on the fly. But with measure calculated columns, they are there, you saw it. So it loads with the file, it makes the file bulky. So let's try, let's say, a different measure. This will be our last for the day. We've learned a lot. In day 4, I will take the first part to explain more on the measures and the columns. We may do some what we call conditional columns also in the next tutorial, and now go into some concepts. Alright, so let's look at a measure. So let me create a new measure. This is the measure. New measure. Like I said, measures are just calculations that are stored. They are not calculated on the fly like that. So let's say I have, the measure is equal to, like I just showed you, the column is equal to, once it's called measure is equal to, it means that the measure is the name. So let me call this total sales. And measures also use the DAX language, which is sum. Once you click on the sum, the column name will come. It means that you need to sum a column. So sum of financial sales, that is the measure. In measures, you have to be careful which column, which table it is going into. So currently, because I selected calendar, it's going into the calendar table. And measures always have a different symbol. It's like a calculator. You see it here. So the total sales I created is here, but I can't see it. When you come to the data, you not see it. It is just held. But when I put it, let's say, inside a card, let's say total sales, so then you find it 118.73. So I just put it in a card. So measures are calculated on the fly. I'll add a video link that actually explains what the difference between measures and